Okay, a very good afternoon and welcome everyone. This is the Inclusivity in Education and Economic Empowerment, part of the program under the Catalyzing Change Week. And this is working towards Catalyst 2030. And I bet everyone here is aware of the various goals that we are working towards. And in this forum, we have quite an array of speakers, but I shall just go through some of the formats that we will be following for this session. As this is a small group, what we will be doing is I'll be starting off by introducing the opening speakers, which is Dr. Lin, and then moving on to the forum, which would be featured by Rachel, we've got Kuhan, we've got Dr. Priscilla, we've got Mohammad Wakkas, and also Sharifah Nabila. So without further ado, let me first introduce myself. My name is Mesh, and I'll be hosting and moderating this event. My background is purely advertising and communications. I'm here today representing Dialogue Includes All and helping Stevens out with this event. Moving forward, I would like to introduce the opening speaker. Now, to talk a little bit about her, I shall read off her profile, if I may. Dr. Lin Mui Kiang is a member of the National SDG Steering Committee and has contributed to the preparation of the National SDG Roadmap, 2 national voluntary reports, and input into the 12th Malaysia Plan. She also participates in the Poverty Circle community and the task force on the high income nation and environmental sustainability and resilience. Dr. Lin is also the founding member of the CSO SDG Alliance and is the Vice President of the Society for the Promotion of the SDGs. Dr. Lin was the head of solutions to the Secretariat set up to localize the implementation of the SDGs at ground level. So Dr. Lin has got so much experience in policymaking and implementation. Dr. Lin was also the first United Nations coordination specialist for Malaysia, where she worked with the government on various stakeholders to achieve agreed goals. She then consulted for UNICEF in child rights protection and acted as program advisor for UNFPA, involved in drawing up socio-economic interventions for women, children, and the aged and demographic matters. Lastly, about Dr. Lin, she has vast experience in development planning, having served for 10 years in the Planning and Development Division of the Ministry of Agriculture, MOA, in Malaysia, and 12 years in the Economic Planning Unit, EPU, Prime Minister's Department, working in various sectors. Dr. Lin is very thorough with Malaysian policies and implementation. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Lin. Dr. Lin, the floor is yours.
Right. Thank you very much, Mesh, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to give the opening address at this important forum. I would like to first congratulate Catalyst 2030 for the tremendous work that you are doing to create innovative and people-centered approaches to attain the SDGs by 2030. This year's theme on inclusivity and in education for economic empowerment is especially relevant and urgent, as education is the passport to the future. Without inclusive, equitable, and quality education and lifelong opportunities for all, we will not be able to break the cycle of poverty that is leaving millions of children, youth, and adults behind. According to the World Report on Disability 2021, about 15% of the world's population lives with some form of disability, of whom 2 to 4% experience significant difficulties in functioning. About 98% of disabled children are not enrolled in school. They are more likely to experience adverse socioeconomic outcomes through lack of education opportunities, and thus creating a vicious cycle. The majority of PWDs are denied employment opportunities even when they have met necessary requirements. Consequently, they have to depend on family members, well-wishers, and charity groups for handouts and continue to suffer increased discrimination, marginalization, and oppression. The UN Convention on the Rights of Disabled Persons with Disabilities identifies 21 types of disabilities. And generally, there are two types of action plans. One for the totally disabled dependent who will need lifelong support, and second group for those who could be empowered through one or more selected services to become more productive citizens. And among all the services, access to education holds the key to empowerment and advocacy. And inclusive and holistic education for the specially able is one of the most effective ways through which we can move towards a just society where no one experiences stigmas and discrimination. When they participate in mainstream education on an equal basis with other children, they learn at an early age that they are valued members of society, and it helps them participate more actively in general community activities throughout their lives and promotes social acceptance in the society. Inclusion teaches students to celebrate differences, and equitable education builds stronger communities. Education and economic empowerment hold the key to deliver knowledge, skills, and a positive attitude to PWDs so that they can be gainfully employed and lead independent lives. Part of the process is to provide them with the resources, opportunities, knowledge, and skills needed to increase their capacity to determine their own future and fully participate in the community. And in recent years, access to digital platforms and technology have made it easier for people to learn, adapt, and upskill. And it can create more opportunities and new possibilities for them to progress. Advancements in technology continue to make learning and development a faster and more approachable endeavor, and this must be leveraged. Electronic devices, such as the iPad, can offer a customized learning environment for every individual. It can be loaded with helpful applications that are specifically built for assisted learning and better communications. And some provide text to voice communication capabilities for individuals who require assistance with verbal communications. SDG 4, as you know, aims to provide children and young people with inclusive, equitable, and quality education that is easily accessible to achieve universal literacy and numeracy. It aims to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, quality primary and secondary education, eliminate gender discrimination and disparities, and ensure equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including PWDs, Indigenous peoples, and children in vulnerable situations. Inclusive schools must also adopt a child-centered pedagogy capable of educating all children, including those who have serious disadvantages and disabilities. There is an urgent need to train more teachers, build more educational facilities, and also upgrade the present ones to provide safe, inclusive, and effective learning environments for all. The prevalence of extreme poverty, insurgency, communal conflicts, and other factors significantly reduce the progress in many countries. Children from poor households have a higher probability of dropping out of school than those from richer backgrounds, and disparities between rural and urban areas remain high. It is important for governments to be committed to promulgate policies for service standards, define responsibilities, provide access to buildings, transport, communications facilities, internet connectivity, poverty alleviation programs, include disability parameters in government databases for planning purposes, and undertake campaigns to increase public understanding of disability. Both the public and private sector should be encouraged to promote equal opportunities in recruitment for work and provide access to microfinance for self-employment and entrepreneurship. Apart from the disabled, according to UNESCO, there are 750 million people around the world who are illiterate in 2018, 2/3 of whom are women. And illiteracy is actually another form of disability. There is need to fund and expand adult learning and education opportunities within a lifelong learning approach to give them the basic reading and numeracy skills to help them find a job, educate their own children, and live healthier lives. In Malaysia, only 1.6% of the population, or 537,000 people with disabilities, were registered with the Department of Social Welfare in 2019, as compared to the estimated rate of 15% of disabled people for a country. So 1.6 versus 15%, only 1.6% are registered. And the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development attributed this low registration rate to individuals being in the denial of a disability, rather than insufficient outreach or registration efforts on the part of the government. The government should carry out studies on the challenges faced by the disabled, as the existing official statistics radically understate the problem. And workforce participation among people with disabilities is very low, with approximately 4,500 workers out of the more than 500,000 registered with the Social Welfare Department. And they are employed in public and private sectors in 2018, 4,500, mainly due to a lack of accessible environment in the workplace and negative employer perceptions of people with disabilities. And apart from education for literacy and numeracy, the government should also look into efficient methods of diagnosing, categorizing, planning, and enrolling PWDs in skills training, and look into upgrading vocational programs to include multiple skills training to widen the scope for PWDs to look for employment. Many CSOs and the private sector firms have also been involved in the caring and training of PWDs in various occupations and businesses, and much more work needs to be done. While employers are eligible for benefits when hiring PWDs, including double tax deduction, tax rebate on the cost of modifying facilities for the disabled, and also training grants, incentives under the OKU Talent Enhancement Program, it is crucial that employers be committed to embrace the universal design, a framework for the designing of living and working spaces and products to benefit the widest possible range of people without the need of special or separate design. This will allow employers to be equipped to accommodate PWDs, hence eliminating this lack of suitable premises as a reason not to employ PWDs. And PWD empowerment needs to be real. It is not merely assistance. It must be long-term. It must be the long-term goal, and this should be strengthened with practical implementation. In our effort to build our human resource and economy, we need collaboration among the government, CSOs, academia, and the private sector in order to empower individuals, families, and communities with the educational opportunities and the employment they need. It takes a village to raise a child, and even more to raise a child with disabilities. So this is our vision forward as to what we need to do. And finally, I would like to wish Catalyst 2030 all the best in your work moving forward. And your contribution moving forward, and how you contribute to the mission to leave no one behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lin. Thank you very much. And a lot of experience behind all those words, these years of serving the nation and the public. You know, you're so right to say that inclusivity is a celebration of differences, because that is so true. Because what more would we not like? You know, we would like that, celebrating differences. And you also mentioned that inclusion empowers and educates people with disability. And you're so right, because I think that when you mentioned the government needs to upgrade the vocational skills and provision for PWDs, it is real. It is real. And you closed your speech by mentioning that PWDs education and empowerment must be real. If it's one thing that we as advocates of this particular cause can take home today is moving forward this particular session, we could all network and also develop on various projects, various initiatives that could empower and educate PWDs in your respective locations, or even wherever that you set foot in the future. Thank you so much, Dr. Lin, for your input. And moving forward would be the forum session. In this session, we will be having 5 speakers, and it will be moderated by Stevens. So without further ado, I will be introducing the speakers, or the forum attendees, participants. First up, we have got Rachel. Has over 8 years of experience in disability advocacy, policy, and youth development issues. Currently, Rachel is the founding executive director of the Special Needs Initiative for Growth, SNIG, a non-governmental organization focused on empowering persons with disabilities through the provision of resources and practical programs for living a meaningful life. So Rachel has dedicated a lot of her time, a lot of her efforts in advocating this cause. She is a 2020 and 2021 Mandela Washington Fellow, a program of the United States Department of State, with funding provided by the US government and administered by the International Research and Exchanges Board. Wow, that's a mouthful, but it's good. It's so good. Rachel is a 2021 Global Exchange on Religion in Society Fellow by the European Union External Action. She was recognized by the United Nations Secretary General Envoy on Youth as one of the 10 young leaders inspired to change the world during COVID-19 crisis. Rachel, we would love to hear all about your 2 years in the pandemic and the projects that you did. It is so nice. Rachel has also been featured on the technology news of the Voice of America and Google Chrome as Google lead taker for using STEM and robotics to empower youth and disabilities in Africa. So good. Awesome. On to the next speaker in the forum session is IRTS Kuanpati. who is a professional and chartered engineer. So Kuan's background is engineering. He is a strong advocate for civic participation in public policy formulation and implementation. He co-founded non-profit organizations, including the Chamber for Social Entrepreneur Development and Social Entrepreneur Development Association, to continue championing social policy advocacy through cross-ministerial engagements and annual national budgets. He is also a very passionate entrepreneur, and I can vouch for this because he's really a passionate entrepreneur. Kuan Padi is the co-founder of Masala Wheels, amazing food, and digital social award-winning non-profit social enterprises that has empowered marginalized communities through sustainable development, sustainable digital and economic initiatives. He has led his social enterprise through a successful private acquisition in 2019. Okay, now this paragraph is all the awards. Now this is mouthful, yeah, I'm going to read it out. He is a Catalyst 2030 Malaysia founding member, chairman alongside 197 countries globally, US ACYPL fellow, and a multi-series TEDx speaker. He had been recognized by the OTC Houston 2021 Top 10 Emerging Leaders, Genti Asia 2021, Top 5 Impact Excellence Young Entrepreneurs 2021, DG Unsung Hero 2021, Anugerah Perdana Belia Negara 2020, Social Entrepreneur of the Year 2019, Prestige 40 Under 40 2019, Star Golden Hearts Awards 2018, Top 10 Most Innovative Young Leaders 2016, among others. Wow, well done, Cohen. Our next speaker for this session would be Dr. Priscilla JC. Dr. Priscilla JC is a transformation-driven leadership trainer using transformational whole brain mindset model to coach future leaders in business setting, public service, and even politics. She employs neuroscience in cognitive development using adult brain dominant inventory as a diagnostic tool in learning and leadership development. She's also a leading TNA consultant and transformational leader trainer for HRDF Malaysia, which is the Human Resource Development Fund, and organizations across a wide spectrum of industries. Her clientele base include SMEs, MNCs, academic institutions, and governing bodies. Her training cuts across industries in Asia, including countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Myanmar, and China. And she's always seeing the best in individuals, and I vouch for this. She always sees the best in individuals. She strives to help them and discover their natural intelligence and realize their dreams. Her tagline is overcoming barriers and crossing borders. So apt. And she's also she always strives to reach out to foreign and local clients from diverse backgrounds. She believes that everyone has the potential in which can be realized and provided the appropriate approaches such as coaching and mentoring. So true. And I think your vision, Dr. Priscilla, aligns with what Dr. Lim has said earlier with empowerment and education. The next speaker for this session is Mohammad Wakkas from Pakistan. Mohammad Wakkas is the CEO and co-founder of Wonder Tree, a company that is developing games using augmented reality that helps children with special needs with their physiotherapy and education. Wakkas and his team's mission is to make special education affordable and accessible for children around the world. This is so true. Wakkas, I think offline, yeah, we've got to talk about metaverse and a whole lot of AR stuff. I think it'd be interesting to tap into that. Last but not least is, as a forum speaker, would be Sharifa Nabila, who is currently pioneering the SGX educational program under SG Education Group, with 10 years of strategic communication and marketing with different industries, with the main being in education and children-focused businesses. Sharifa has worked alongside local Malaysian SME entities and founders. She is also a director of 2 SME companies and managerial positioning. Many local grounding solutions was idealized and implemented. Okay, I'm just reading this. All right, lastly, to resolve the academic and economical shortcomings, entrepreneurial mindset and strategic collaborations are necessary. Very well done, Sharifa, honestly. And to moderate all of this, we have none other than the superstar himself, Mr. Steven Chan, who is a successful businessman, or was a successful businessman until 2007, sorry, when he lost all his vision caused by glaucoma, an eye disorder that causes blindness. Subsequently, with God's grace and the support of his wife, Kay, He founded two non-profit organizations, the Malaysian Eye Patient Society, formerly known as Malaysian Glaucoma Society, and SOS Missions Berhad, Save One Sight Mission Berhad. So everything dealing with visual impairment. These two organizations aim to educate the public on prevention of unnecessary blindness, as well as encouraging people with eye disorders to deal with the changes that arise with the disease. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the forum session begins. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mesh, for the kind introduction. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Lin Wikiang, for coming to give us your enlightening and informative speech. Oh, without further ado, I want to pass the floor over to my 5 beloved friends who has kindly given their precious time over to us and to share some of their insights and the works they have put into this space, the inclusion space. As usual, we shall always begin with the ladies. So over to you, Miss Rachel, to tell us a little bit of yourself and how are you involved in this space? Rachel.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That's so kind of you. Like Mash rightly said, I'm really passionate about persons with disability, and what I use some ICT demand-driven tools to empower persons with disability. I wouldn't want to go deeply into the work, but I know that we deal with 4 disability clusters because it's really important to us to see that there's inclusion in terms of learning engagement, in terms of the outcomes, in terms of how they could translate this into vocational skills and then jobs, earning a living once they've been trained by us. So some of the activities we do are STEM, robotics, drones, piloting, and then we have 4 disability clusters. We deal with learners with autism, learners with Down syndrome, learners with visual impairments, and learners with cerebral palsy. And once they're engaged, we teach them so many practical skills on drone assembly, like I mentioned, educating them on how to use this to earn a living, so that once they are trained, they can transit into, entrepreneurs or gaining a job that would help them become independent. And we also use this to break the barriers around exclusion, discrimination, stereotyping, because we understand that education is something that's very fundamental for the development of any person. And we know that once persons with disability are left behind, it really doesn't create that. That's why we're really passionate about the work that we do. I would also want to talk a bit about some of the challenges that we experienced during COVID, because I would use that to talk about why I was recognized by the UN. And I would say that one of the things that we experience is that in Nigeria, we have about 85 million persons with disability. And in a current study, we also identified that we have a developmental disability that ranges between 0.4% to 12.17% and 20.4%, screened for developmental impairment among other physical and sensory disability. And we identified that students with disability in our country were segregated during the COVID, as opposed to non-disabled learners who could access remote learning and also adapt to other learning styles. And we had to do something. We had to step up to lead with purpose and strength. And what we did was we tried to provide learners with disability an accessible and equitable framework where they could explore impactful collaborations and partnerships through STEM, robotics, and other learning styles. And then we also did what we call train the trainers, because we understand that once you train a person with disability, you still need to train the people who care for them, because that way there's a continuity. They can follow up, they can monitor, they can evaluate the position of learning. And it really helped us, because with that, we're able to have students who could, learn. They were engaging. Many of them will walk up to us and say, hey, we want to be IT specialists. We want to be roboticists. We want to be able to learn how to be electrician, like go into electrician, become an electrician and all of that. So that's basically one of the models that we use, and it really helped us to, get, the best people who could be part of our team, and that really made us recognized by the United Nations, to be one of the 10 young leaders inspired to, change the world. And then afterwards, last year, September, Google identified us as Google Leap Takers because they saw our model as equitable and the framework to be inclusive, to train people with disability and the impact, around ICT for people with disability.
Thank you, Rachel, for the sharing. Next up, Dr. Priscilla. Dr. Priscilla.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for listening and thank you for taking the time to join us today. I would like to introduce briefly those from my team, Trailblazers Sarawak, Rijeng Jahed, Felix Jo, who is my partner, and Denti Midom, who have been trained and coached by me personally and who are now training other future leaders and trainers back in East Malaysia. Now, I don't have to introduce myself since it has been done by Mesh comprehensively. He was actually reading my whole CV. Okay, so I can skip that. I'm sure it was so memorable the way he spoke. So I don't think you will forget a word that he said, the way he did it. It was with full enthusiasm. Thank you, Mesh. It was very inspiring. Okay, now, being a people trainer and developer since the 90s, I started very, very young, since in my mid-20s. Now, one of the challenges I faced was people with learning abilities. Why do I include them as special abilities? It is those people who were working in the factories who could not find any other job opportunities as administrators, as managers. And we had to care for them. I was tasked to pay special attention to them by giving them motivation. I was not trained at that time. And I had to learn to develop modules. I had to learn to be a motivator, although I did not know how or what it meant to be a motivator. But then fast forward to this day, I've learned something, that if you inspire them enough, and by helping them to discover their true potentials, you can drive people to reach out their dreams. You see, there's nothing like knowing your core values, knowing what is the best in yourself, because I always believe that we don't judge the book by its cover, and thus I don't read a person by the person's title, but by what the person contribute and how he can contribute to society and to the people around him. So one of our campaigns is to include people of various abilities and bring together resources among our collaboration partners across Asia and Europe. It is indeed an uphill task, but at least we are climbing uphill instead of going downhill. Now, although we might have to fall down and pick ourselves up, we take the next few steps and make baby steps towards the uphill climb, instead of going down. So that's still hope. And this still gives us the light at the end of the tunnel, because as bad as things are, I still managed to develop about 5 to 6 future trainers and leaders who have all gone to respective countries like Qatar to develop their own modules to reach out to people with special abilities in the corporate world. Think about it. These are the group of people who were not touched, whose potentials are not tapped. And they were treated as employees and be part of the employment statistics. But when they face difficulties in their job due to learning abilities, they would be pushed down to the back room instead of being given special attention to develop what is the best in them. And we do have people in my team who have come out from that rut, I call it rut, because they were facing depression, and it became worse when they were forced to take up jobs, which they found out that they have already. I mean, when you have been doing the same job over a number of years, you become bored, you get bored with doing the same thing. And then this can ultimately reduce your learning ability. This will reduce your cognition. So it doesn't matter what kind of ability that you have. You could be a professional, and when you face a lot of suppression and oppression in the workplace, you will go down to the
thank you, Dr. Priscilla.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry because time is up. We all have 3 minutes each.
All right.
Can I now thank you for that sharing? Can I now invite Sharifa?
Yes. Hello. Hi. Thank you, everyone, for this. I appreciate so much for being here. Thank you again to Stevens, and thank you, Mesh, for the quick introduction. All right. So I will go ahead, apart from introducing myself, I will go to how exactly I got into this. Personally, my own mother introduced me to the autism community at a very young age when I'm 5 years old. And furthermore, professionally, as I grew, as I had my own business when I was 23 years old, I opened myself up to the different abled community. I'm privileged enough to be part of the abled community and was not aware on how things are outside of my world. So I have created an awareness month under my company when I was 23. And we have catered an awareness campaign with Doodle Malaysia, where we cater creatively to the different able, especially for the autisms, back in 2015. That was my first time trying to create awareness. And apart from that, I have managed to be given another opportunity as of now, as I am with Mr. Stephen, as he is well aware. I am currently working with SGEG, which is SG Education Group, which has a TVET. TVET actually means Technical and Vocational Education and Training in Malaysia. So I'm part of the SG Academy group, where we have a technical college that's based in Jalan Ipoh, Malaysia. So from here, I am actively working on 3 projects. One, more towards a college, which is the TVET college, that's open for 16 years old and above, which is for all communities, not just the able community. We have around 3 active students currently who are from different hearing ability and deaf, who are deaf, and also who cannot speak. So from these 3 students was our first opening to make sure the TVET syllabus that we have in Malaysia, we are opening up to the different able. We are doing this from an entity level to get it work done. The second project that I'm working with is, I think, from the government bodies, they offered this, they gave us a challenge where we actually took it up under PAKESO, EIS. For those that don't know, EIS is Employment Insurance Scheme that's under Malaysia. We are working closely with a government agency where we do this upskilling and reskilling for adults of different abilities, but more towards individuals who are retrenched or in between jobs right now. We have already trained up to 200 different individuals, and they have successfully gone through it and get jobs. Not just because of our program, of course, because they actively try to find a job with the new skills they have, get themselves involved in. And the third would be SGX, which I have said, as Mesh had introduced me just now. SGX, you could say, is a self-learning method, or should I say a self-regulated learning, where it's open from teenagers up to adults, especially Malaysians. That's where we're opening right now. And we are doing this SGX program where they can self-learn, they take the method. And it does not matter whether it's for everybody who are Malaysians who want to pick up new skills and using an online platform under SGX to make it work. So from what I've seen so far professionally and personally since I was young, usually those who are not faced or know any of the world outside their own especially for the able community. They have no awareness whatsoever. They do not know there's a bigger world out there. And I'm talking just from the neighborhood and the entity point of view. And I think as an individual ourselves need to pick that up and tell ourselves that we really need to do this right. We need to have the need to say, look, we need to let the others know we're not alone. As much as we have two arms, two legs, there are other people with totally different worlds out there we don't know of. And I think it's very important for each of us as individuals to make that awareness change. So I really hope that could happen. And me being here is one way getting that done. Yeah. So
thank you, Sharifah.
Yeah.
Next, finally, is the guy's turn. Mohammad Wakkas, my dear friend from Pakistan.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me. It is truly a pleasure and an honor to be among such talented and diverse people working towards impact. So as Mash mentioned in the introduction, that we develop augmented reality games which help children with special needs in their education as well as in their physiotherapy. What we're trying to do is we have a mission and a vision to make special education and physiotherapy accessible, affordable, and effective for children throughout the world. And I would just like to share, a couple of points how we got to this, how we started this. It was started by my co-founder, whose name is Usman, and who has an older brother with special needs, and I'm Usman's neighbor. So 6 years ago, he approached me. He said that I have this idea of using gamification and games to help my brother and help other children like him. And I said that this is a amazing cause, and I can see that I'm sure that this is not just needed here but around the world. So we did a lot of research, and we found that in Pakistan there is a huge demand and a lack of supply of trained special educators, even institutions, physiotherapy centers, you name it. There's a huge lack. So we started this, and then we came to realize that the demand and lack of supply isn't just in Pakistan; it's throughout the world. So right now, thanks to Stevens, we're working in Singapore, as well as we're now expanding to USA and UAE as well. And we, again, our mission is to help children around the world because there's a huge gap between the number of trained professionals out there who can help these children and the number of institutions and the actual number of children out there. So we hope that we can make an effective dent and help a lot of families and help a lot of children.
Thank you, Wakkas. Thank you. Great job. Last but not least, my dear chairman and my dear friend, Kuhan.
Right, thank you, Stevens. I'm definitely honored to be here, part of a larger group of members. So a little bit, I think Mesh has actually mentioned quite a lot, and I'm not going to go and touch about it. So my journey of social entrepreneurship started sometime in 2015 when it's very, very new in Malaysia. And I got involved as I lived in a very close neighborhood of underserved communities where there are people who receive unequal access to education, and they were deprived of a lot of opportunities and got involved in social ills. As they got involved in social ills, it started to become a generational issue. So there was once one of the parents actually looked up to me and said that, how can I have my son just, like the others out of this circle of nasty social ills that they're involved in. And that's how we started our social enterprise, which is called Masala Wheels, mainly to targeting at-risk youths who are involved in gangsterism, who are involved in substance abuse, drug abuse, recovering them, placing them on the righteous path, and using entrepreneurship as the base. So what started with the youths finally ended up with the family institutions, because we realized that the problem started with the family, and then it started growing into community, and then we started thinking that we should go national and global. So moving on from there, we started to do advocacy, and we started our advocacy role in 2018. where we realized that only bringing impact within our social enterprise would not help our peers, just like many people over here who are doing great jobs in the space of inclusion and great jobs in the space of advocating SDGs. So we started to form institutionalizations, institutions that actually support the role of social advocacy. So in 2018, we founded the chambers, and then it moved on to a few non-profit movement, and recently we onboarded Catalyst 2030 in the Malaysian chapter. So over the years, one of our greatest effort is advocating to the government, and from 2018 up to 2022, we have seen fourfold increase in terms of budget allocation by the government itself towards the social entrepreneurship space. So impacting from a very localized chapter up to a regional chapter, we have always been advocating for inclusion and the support of our peers in the same space, so that we don't only focus on a very small group, but we are able to deliver impact on a larger scale. Thank you, Stevens. That's from me.
Thank you, Gohan. Thank you for your insightful sharing. The biggest of time, I'm going to skip one of the questions because every participant could see each and every one of our speakers' passion. And just a little bit of sharing on my part is why today, although the subject is about inclusion, especially for the people with disabilities, but I've invited my friends like Dr. Priscilla, Kuhan, and also Sharifah, because they are not just working for slightly about the people with disability, but with people from all walks of life. And I've often shared this, that we are all disabled in a way, or we call it differently enabled. Some of us are physically disabled, and they are also even more who are disabled due to circumstances, environments, social ills, whatever you call it. So we can all see that passion. My next question is, what is your biggest challenge? You've been in this space, for many of you, for years now. What do you think is your biggest challenge? Perhaps now we will go to starting it with the guys. So I will start with Kuhan.
All right. So one of my biggest challenge is actually, so I work very closely in the social entrepreneurship space. So we try to advocate for responsible purchasing, responsible procurement, where we try to advocate sustainability in impact by your purchasing rights. And one of the greatest challenge is raising awareness. And when we say awareness, is that to convince people that every purchases that they make with a non-profit organization or for-profit organization like social enterprises actually helps to impact a certain group of people, and that is more sustainable. So that when we were to work with a certain beneficiary group, it will not be something that we handhold them for 1 day or 2 days, but we are able to handhold them for the next coming years till they are economically free to self-sustain themselves. So that is a long-term impact that we always work on. But unfortunately, one of the greatest challenges that we continue to face is the comparison between the markets, where people are, they compare us to a much more competitive market where you might not see a social value to it. For instance, very simple things like, purchasing reusable container versus a polystyrene container. And when people talk about the impact on environment, they always think, no, but polystyrenes are much cheaper than a reusable container. So that conflict continue to exist, including when it comes to social impact, where we say that, if you purchase products that are made by these individuals, they can be economically empowered and they can self-sustain with the business that you're supporting, versus purchasing it from a factory made in large volumes or large masses. So that strike of a balance between economic and also social value continue to persist, including in Malaysia. And I think that's not only a Malaysian problem, it's a global problem where everyone else is also facing. So that challenge is one of a prevalent one.
Okay,
thank
you, Kuhan. Over to you, Wakkas. What is your challenge in Pakistan?
So our we have two or three biggest challenges. One of the biggest challenges actually, developing or designing a game which is inclusive. And what I mean by inclusive is that it can cater to, or majorly cater to children with all types of disabilities or challenges. For example, designing a game that a child with ADHD or a hyperactive child can play, and the same game can be played by a child with cerebral palsy who's sitting in a wheelchair, who cannot move or who is not mobile that much. So the amount of research, the amount of technological development, the amount of trial and error and iteration, and the amount of feedback goes. So it's very time taking and consuming. But at the same time, we want to develop games which can have the biggest impact. And just a little on that, the way that our games work is that we develop games not based on any type of disability or challenge, but we make a game on a skill set. For example, we have a game for hand-eye coordination, or we have a game for memory retention, attention retention. So if a child with ADHD or a child with Down syndrome, they have a challenge of memory retention, they both can play the game and they both can improve on their own pace, in their own level, in their own limits by playing the game. So this is a big challenge. It requires a team. It requires a team of experts in order to design the game. The second challenge, and obviously, it requires resources as well, a lot of, capital resources. And the second challenge is, securing capital in order to develop these games. Investors are not as much, interested and adventurous when it comes to targeting a niche market and, targeting something with a lot of impact, but not a lot of, promised ROI or profits. And the third thing is, again, striking a balance where we can, since we're a for-profit organization, we're a startup, so striking a balance where we're able to, generate enough profit through sales that we can survive, but at the same time, we're not, making it out of reach for parents and, especially parents from marginalized communities, that they can't afford our game, because the idea, the vision is to make these games available for every child in the world. So these three things which are interconnected.
Thank you, Wakkas. Well, from awareness to capital, that's a problem we all have, don't we? Next, Sharifah, what is your biggest challenge?
Okay. You said Sharifah, right? Correct? Yes. Yep. Okay, so when it comes to, in terms of the experiences that I have so far, I'm going to connect it to the challenges that I'm facing right now. So what happens is, in our TVET college right now, we have a handful of students who are different-abled in the college itself that had applied with our community that's usually able community. So with these numbers of different-abled communities coming in, the individuals, they have to follow along with the syllabus that we have on hand. We aren't able to make sure whatever that we have ongoing right now to be catered with the different-abled community to follow along. Example I can give you is, we have one particular individual, which is a student of ours, who is hard of hearing. Because of hard of hearing, when it comes to physical classes or Zoom meetings, especially during the pandemic, it was very hard for him to catch 100% of the materials that we are giving out due to the difficulties of his ability. And so our own trainer, the trainer who is in charge of educating that said individual, would have to take the additional responsibility to make sure this individual is able to take up the education that he needs. So when it comes to the syllabus itself that's already catered to a certain box of education, the individual, or should I say the trainers, the educator, need to have that extra age of understanding. We need to do that extra to make sure the student get what is needed for education. So far right now, the reason why we aren't able, from the TVET college point of view, aren't able to take up this challenge and face it is because the number of OKU, or should I say different able community in the TVET colleges are not that high. It's almost a few hundreds per se. So if we were to put a budget, or should I say, we contain our priority for the different abled and make it inclusive in terms of the syllabus that we have right now that has been ongoing for a number of years, we need to take up that extra effort, that extra understanding and awareness, even just from the trainer's point of view, to get it done. So this is the challenge that I'm facing right now, because coming from a TVET college, the institute point of view, we have that very small awareness, especially when it comes from the abled community, to understand we need to be different. We need to make that change from a very small spectrum, not from the government point of view, not the entity point of view, from the individual's awareness, which right now, me as Sharifa, one of the individuals that is representing in SG Education Group, is trying to make that happen. So it's a big challenge, but I really hope we can make that happen. So we're slowly integrating that.
Thank you, Sharifa. Now, from awareness on procurement, from the social enterprise to the lack of capital, yours is also another perennial problem as highlighted by Dr. Lin. A lot of work needs to ensure there's enough talent, especially in special education training, accessibility training. That's always a challenge faced by many of us in this space. Yes, it's a good challenge as well. Next, over to you, Dr. Priscilla.
You're muted, Dr.
Priscilla. Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, I always forget. All right, sorry. Now, out of the pandemic, we encountered more diversity in terms of abilities. Thus, the requirements to create more face-to-face mentoring sessions. However, the economic constraints have hindered us from doing so. But this can be solved by creating hybrid learning and by creating more sessions through follow-ups and lifelong learning and development. So one of the impactful ways is for us to take up one-to-one face-to-face meeting. It's an arduous task and it's very time-consuming, but then it's very satisfactory because you can see the results, and these results can be very immediate. So we now go for qualities instead of numbers. So yeah, so that's how we deal with it.
Thank you for that sharing of challenges. Again, the economics of skills, quality versus quantity, and also capital. Yeah, aren't we all having that problem? Finally, Rachel, I'm sure you have a lot in mind. Over to you.
No, it's just, I'll just be very clear on one that was very, in fact, we're still working on. One of the challenge that is really prominent in this part of my world, Africa and Nigeria, and that we faced since 2019, a bit till now, but we're changing the game, is when we train people with visual impairment and Down syndrome and autistic persons, we trained them on leadership and technical skills. And then we had few organizations who wanted to integrate them for internship roles, because we believe that once they've been trained by us educationally, it's really good for them to have the practical part of the work. And that means they have to intern in organizations where they learn the best practices around working ethics, working tasks, team collaboration, and all of that. And a lot of organizations did not want to hire them. There were a lot of stereotypes going on. Oh, we can't deal with this. We don't have accommodations to get interns with disability as part of us. It was a struggle. And then we had to overcome this obstacle towards achieving social innovation by conducting an awareness. We went on LinkedIn to create an outreach to employers of labor to say, hey, if you see the positive outcomes that could be derived from hiring persons with disability, you're going to get more profitability in business, and then you'll get much more diversity, and you know, it's going to be really inclusive for you. And apart from that, we also gave them insights into how people with disabilities, if they were given opportunities to work as interns, they could serve customers with disability, because whether we like it or not, we have customers who are disabled. So that's another market of its own. And when I showed them this dynamics on LinkedIn through tweet and Twitter, we used LinkedIn and Twitter at that time, it kind of gave 47%, because we had data from that time, 47% of employers of labor across, not just in Nigeria, but across other parts of the country, were able to see reasons of why we needed to hire persons with disability. And they affirmed their support that they were going to do that. And then between then and now, we've had about 20 organizations who are working with us to provide internship support for people with disability. Also, we did something very innovative this year. I partnered with the United States counterpart from my Mandela Washington Fellowship, and then we developed a short documentary film. Now, this film is a dialogue between a group of employers of labor and group of persons with disability. And it was a way to create advocacy to say Nigeria disability rights says that people with disability, once they've been trained, they need to be hired and retained. And that was what the documentary did, promote awareness around the work. So that's basically some of the challenges we've had around, the few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel and Vion. Well, moving on. This will be my last question for the day. Working in this space, well, it's always an uphill task. And as you all can hear, we have all been sharing about why we are in this and what is our biggest challenge. And in line what the catalyst for change it's moving towards, especially advocating during this catalyst change week, because we are now is 2022 and we've got another 8 more years, 2030, to meet that 17 social development goals. Imagine today if they are among some of our participants, people from the government, people from the corporate, or well, investors. Prayerfully, there are some. What would you need? What do you think would help you in your work expedite change, moving towards meeting that goal that we are going for, whether it's equalities in economic and education, that we are all advocating for? What would be that, if there's a genie here, I know all of us would look for 3 wishes, but let's just focus on one. If there is one wish that you wish you will have that will help you expedite your goal, what would that be? This time, I'm going to switch things around. Maybe we'll start off with Sharifah.
I guess Mr. Stephen likes me. Okay, so okay, so I actually have almost 2 wishes actually, but of course one being the main thing. I actually did a little bit of research, and I found out that there was a compilation of main messages back in 2017 by the Voluntary National Reviews when it comes to Political Forum for Sustainable Development. And the reason I did this is because I know I'm not the only one wishing this, and I was right. So there was a big wish that's made for Malaysians community. I'm sorry, I'm very much about Malaysia right now because that's what I'm from. We would like to wish more than 90% enrollment rates for primary and secondary school levels for both boys and girls, and 33% for higher education with gender ratio slightly in favor in girls. This was one of the wishes that's been granted out. I know it's not aligned to what I said earlier with all the different able community, but there's a reason to this, because I have a feeling that with this particular main wish out there, I think will help a lot of communities in every way. And the possibility of having this wish done, it was been done in 2017. Yeah, but I think this is definitely one wish that could happen and make quite a radical change if we could make it. Because a part of putting into the gender perspective is the fact that by enrolling more individuals of different abilities and genders, of course, it will help all of us to understand in terms of awareness, in terms of what we can do better as a community, and everything else falls in together from there. Because I think we all know this, education itself is very important. And I'm blessed enough to be part of this TVET College community to make that change from the community level. And I really hope there's more individuals out there would see this awareness and make that change too.
Thank you, Sharifa.
All right.
Over to you, Kuhan. I know you have many wishes, but let's.
I do.
Yeah.
I think very specifically at this point of time is if there is any corporates, I would say that a lot of corporates are now adopting ESGs, and ESGs are very much related to the work that we do. And I think many people are putting their strategies, are finding ways to do it. I hope that they speak to us as well and incorporate the models that are already pre-existing into their companies and into their deliverables. And if there are any government members here, I feel that, if they want to plug the leakages of their value system, one of the ways is to have these social impact organizations as part of their delivery mechanism. And if you ask, is it doable? Yes, it's doable. We have actually managed to advocate for one of the ministries in Malaysia to actually use one of the social enterprises as a government delivery mechanism for a localized approach. So if these two is actually achieved, I believe government and also corporate would help us to accelerate the achievements of the SDG goals. So over to you, Stevens.
We all pray for that, Kuan.
Indeed.
Yeah. So what about you, Dr. Priscilla?
Okay, one of my wishes is to commercialize my course modules to create the capital to train, empower, and certify more trainers and mentors who are not able to fund themselves fully towards the certification, which are governed by the British qualification framework. Because if one is going to be registered under HRDF, we need to be at least one step above the ordinary and the mass trainers. Okay, and secondly is to have a center to conduct physical and hybrid training programs with the required facilities. That includes therapy, meditation, and with a landscape that can support learning. That's all.
Thank you, Doctor. Over to you, Rachel. I know you also got many wishes.
Thank you, Stephen. So for me, I just use this to also chip in an advice and recommendation. I would say this is the best time for developing countries. We coming together. That's why I love the Catalyst 2030 as a platform, because it's bringing the brilliant minds together to solve the world complex problems. This is the best time for countries, governments to start formulating policies on inclusive education. If we haven't done that before, because the pandemic actually taught us to do things differently. And developing countries can now start utilizing the opportunity of this pandemic that we suffered from 2 years ago to start effecting positive and lasting change for our students with disability. It needs to be intentional, and we need to start thinking about how people with disability can thrive with non-disabled learners. And so I would want to reiterate that it's very imperative that we see children with disability as children first, because that's my wish, because that's something people don't see, and then focus on raising a child as a community secondly, because childhood is a critical time for everyone as we develop as humans, and whether we like it or not, it sets the foundation for our childhood or our adulthood, so that we can bring our children, or we become that better adults that will change the future. So that means, personally, what I would wish is that we need to expose more young persons with disability especially in under-resourced communities, to various technical opportunities and leadership skills that will foster them for employment and access to job creation for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Last but not the least, Wakkas.
So again, there are a lot of wishes that can help us fulfill our vision and mission of imparting education and development for every child with special needs in the world. But if I am to sum it up, I believe that if you can get the right partners and the right funding, then that definitely paves the way forward for us to achieve that vision and our goal.
Wow, thank you, Wakkas. I'm tempted to ask one last question. I know I just said last, but just one last question. And I'm going to borrow what Rachel just now said, and that is the word intentional. So if it's intent, who do you think would be your best partner to meet your wish? Private, public, education. Rachel, you have to just choose one. I know you can't choose all three.
I wanted to say all of the above, but I'll just be modest. For me, I would start with the public, because that's where a lot of eyes, a lot of people are, and that's where most of the policies around education is even planned, communicated, and then implemented. So the public is a very fundamental part that needs to be worked on, because that way we're able to push or streamline to the private and the educational sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Policies. Wakkas?
So yeah, pretty much, what Rachel said, I would love to choose all of them. But if I have to choose one, then I would definitely go with the public, because they're the biggest stakeholder in what we're doing. It's for them. So we would start with the public.
Okay, public again. What about you, Sharifa?
Well, I'm going to be sounding repetitive, I guess. But I could simply say, if I could, other like-minded institutes who is going for the same goal as me. I'm not going to name drop any. But if not that, again, to the public, because if we can get that reach, it'll be amazing. Because whatever that I'm trying to get out there, and if we could increase the number of enrollment rates that way, that'll be amazing.
Okay, 3 out of 5 public. Dr. Priscilla?
I'm going with Sharifa partly. The first one is, of course, to find a partner among any professional or educational body for the facilities, at least. And secondly, we partner with...
No, you have to choose one. You have to choose one only.
All right, then I stop there. So Sharifa.
So you are private. Well, Sharifa, I
will partner with Dr. Priscilla. Yes.
Yeah.
Public.
I think we've met our partner.
Okay. Finally, go ahead. I know you are working very hard, irritating our public government bodies. Well, I shouldn't answer this for you. One sector. Which one?
I think I would go for the public sector as well.
See? Why? All of us, I think there's 6 of us, including me. I think except for Dr. Priscilla and Sharifa, which is...
Yeah, no, actually you stopped me from saying the second option when I was about to say public, but then I think, hearing that the rest are going for the public, then I shouldn't.
Okay. But I think we all raise up our hand and say it's actually the public. Yeah. So, well, make your vote count. I know it sounds political saying that, but yeah, make your vote count. Prayerfully, the government. But thank you, guys. Thank you for your time today. Thank you to all the participants for your patient listening. Thank you very, very much. If for me, if there's one wish that I would really want to make to the public, if there's anyone from the public, maybe Dr. Lin will be able to help us on that. I really hope that one day in the education sector, especially, empathy learning be made into a subject, especially for our next generation and the next generation. Thank you. God bless you all for listening. And back to you, Mesh, for the question and answers time.
Thank you, Stevens, and thank you to the wonderful panel of forum speakers. Definitely loads of input. In fact, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to lie. While the forum was going on, Rachel was like, we need to connect. I was like, yes, Rachel, we need to connect. And we already were exchanging numbers. So, so the take home from this session, more than anything else, is what spurs on for better projects, better initiatives for the future. And it may not be something which is of immediate action. It could be something that is going to be maybe in the near future, 3 months or 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. But the idea here is that we would love to use this as a platform, as an opportunity to connect on LinkedIn, personally, whether it's mobile numbers, whether it's emails, whatever's said and done. We are looking to make the world a better place. With that, I would like to open the floor to questions. Anyone who has any particular questions targeting any particular speaker. We have, in terms of time allocation, 15 minutes, well, now 14 minutes. Any questions, anyone? Okay, I'll start the ball rolling since there are no questions. I've got one question for, let's see. Rachel, I've got a question for you now. You mentioned that during the pandemic, you have done a lot of trainings and skilling for people with disabilities in things like with drone pilots and all of that, right? Yeah, so very tech related. Now, how have these people with disabilities fared during this particular time of the pandemic and post-pandemic? So how have they coped during the pandemic, and how are they coping post-pandemic now?
All right, good question. Thank you, Mash. So during the pandemic, one of the things that made us to cope with training them and providing them opportunities around vocational skills and then internships and then entrepreneurial skills was that we were able to use disability-friendly formats. Remember, the COVID was virtually remote. So that means you can't go out, you can't mix with people. So we had to start thinking about innovative strategies, how to bring them in the virtual community and train them in a way that they could become, online savvy. And it was very difficult, I wouldn't lie to you, because as we're doing that, we're also training the carers and the special educators, because we wanted the continuity, we wanted to follow on, we wanted some sort of trajectory whereby there's an impact chain between the educators that we're training and also the persons with disability. So we use disability-friendly formats, like such as videos with captions, and then other assistive technologies for people who are visually impaired, text-to-speech softwares, because we really wanted them to be part of an inclusive world whereby no one was left behind. And it really helped because that really provided them a sort of confidence to, get jobs. Some of them got remote jobs. We have some of our visually impaired persons who are programmers, who are web developers, and they're doing amazingly well in digital marketing and all of that skill because they were able to translate what they learned during the COVID into real work experience, and then they're earning a living for themselves. So that's basically the outcome and some of the strategies we adopted during COVID. And then after COVID, when it was 2021, 2022, we got physical. And that means we wanted to have an interface, a face-to-face engagement whereby we train them, because you can't fly a drone when you're here remotely. I'm speaking to you from this part of the world. So then we had to start looking at COVID regulations, having not more than 50 people That's the regulation in my country. And that we're engaging the educators as well, so that they can be trained enough to train the trainees. And it was really very remarkable because we saw that engagement and the spark in their curiosity for them to actually go out there and start doing engaging things, you know, like robotics, drone piloting. And right now, many of them are now into the tech space because of that, you know, interest that we sparked in them, and then, you know, the outcome of the training. So that's basically some of the strategies we use, and it's really been working for us. And then in 2021, I forgot to say that the Zero Project also awarded us as the best innovative practice for ICT and employment. So basically finding our model as something very remarkable for people with disabilities. So yes, it's been challenging, but we're able to maneuver through the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I think that is great because, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Thank you so much. Just for your information, Kuhan has put a link in the chat. This is, if you're not a member of the Catalyst 2030, please do sign up and join a larger family of over 197 countries and networks. So the idea here is to spur, because again, having a chat with you guys over 2 hours, I know for a fact that this is a starting point to many things to come in the future. I've got my question to Kuhan. Kuhan, you have been working in the entrepreneurial field for a long time and also dealing with policymakers, right, in Malaysia. How has it been over the last 5 years as opposed to before? Like example, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of awareness on mental health, which wasn't in the past before, right? And then suddenly we have job opportunities for psychologists when previously psychologists would only work in the HR field. But in terms of people with disabilities and social empowerment, how has the policymakers and has it become better by any chance?
I would say definitely it has become better. In the past, I think social impact organizations were only seen as NGOs, primarily where they would just come in when needed, or when the time comes every 5 years, they would be required to reach out to the grassroots, and then they use these as intermediaries to reach out to the grassroots. But I think over time, with a lot of efforts undertaken by, including Dr. Lin here, who is also part of the APPGM SDG, we see more long-term reach out and long-term sustainability of the organizations. And not only that, with quite a few disasters that have happened recently, including the flood, including the COVID pandemic, people realize that they need a long-term engagement with the community instead of once-off. And that's where these organizations, including NGOs that are have a long or constant engagement, and also social enterprises come into play. So now we see that in a few years, not only the budget has increased to further strengthen these networks, including through APPGM SDG under Dr. Lin, but also the other larger organizations. We have seen a lot of support undertaken, but of course, there's still a long way to go, but at least it's progressive and not regressive. Yeah.
Thank you, Gwen. I mean, yeah, I mean, 4 times more the budget allocation. I think that's a statement, right? Some statement or something. Just to step out of the box a bit, my next question, or if anyone has any questions, I'm just going on asking questions like this is my forum. Anyone has any questions? Okay, then just one last question. This is very directed towards Madalena from the Catalyst team. Madalena, my question to you would be, how has the reception been for Catalyst 2030 in terms of participation, in terms of reach? And am I muted? Did I mute myself? I did not ask anything, right? You all didn't hear what I said, right?
I heard pretty much everything, but what has been the reception? And then you stopped.
Okay. So my question to you would be like, how has the reception been, the support been for Catalyst 2030? We've got 7 years towards where we're heading to. One is this group, and secondly, for a larger group of network people, what are your next steps and how can we help you fuel this, this cause?
It's a wonderful question. I think Kuhan might also have something to add, but I think Catalyst 2030 has grown super quickly in the past year. The Malaysia chapter has grown very quickly since last year, Catalyzing Change Week, when we launched the Malaysia chapter. There is for sure a lot of support for the cause, for social entrepreneurship, inclusion, and the SDGs. As we all know, it's a very important question and very important for us all to join forces. How to help join the movement, join the chapter's activity and engage. I know Malaysia has been doing great, collaborating with the government, supporting us with the creation of the reports. I don't know if Kuhan, there's anything that you would like to add specifically on the Malaysia chapter. Just feel free to jump in.
I think Madalena has covered it well, especially being very supportive. Thank you.
And of course, if you ever have any kind of question about Catalyst, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to support.
Thank you. Thank you, Madalena. Thank you, Kuhan. And thank you, everyone, for being in this. I think it's 3:56. I think it should be about time that we wrap up. Again, to respect the God of time, as my father would say. Again, thank you, Dr. Lin, for your wonderful opening speech. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your abundant experience with tech-related matters and development, upskilling. Kuhan, your entrepreneurial experience in Malaysia and the region across our surrounding regions. Dr. Priscilla, with your people empowerment development, thank you so much for the years of efforts in developing people and skills and what's to come. Wakkas, I definitely would love to connect with you because I would love to discuss on how we can gamify a lot of things, because I'm involved with communications. I deal a lot with creative communications, and I work with creative agencies in Malaysia and the Southeast Asian region. So it'd be great to tap your coding mind and see what we can work on in the future. Lastly, Sharifah, all the best with SG. And I really hope that things go well your side, and looking forward to more projects on your end. Last but not least, the superstar of the show, Mr. Stevens Chan. Thank you so much again, Stevens, for all the work and years of experience that you have contributed to the Malaysian society. And let's use this as a platform for us to discuss and move forward with a better world for all of us and the future generation. Thank you so much.
Group picture. Can
yes,
take a group
definitely.
Picture?
Let's take a group picture if everyone can have their cameras on. And I am just going to take a screen capture. Shall we see? Okay, Felix is on. Can we see Rijang, Emma, Denti? Okay, let's just take a picture then. Everyone, your party poses. Any party pose in 3, 2, 1. Done. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
See you all. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mesh, for organizing. And thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stevens. Thank you, Mesh.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll connect with the rest of you.
Sure thing,
Reach me on LinkedIn. Mesh is surely our common connection on LinkedIn.
Must do. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. And Mash, I would love to connect and talk in more detail. We do have, expertise in augmented reality and virtual reality. So we have worked with, in the past with advertising projects as well on the site. So yeah, would love to connect and, explore further.
For sure, Wakkas. Your LinkedIn is Wakkas Mohammad, right?
Mohammad Wakkas, yes.
Acha, bye. I'll definitely connect with you on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Okay. I would like to connect with you too, Wakkas. And I'll be meeting up with Sharifah soon.
Yes, I'll be meeting you soon. And thank you again to everyone here. Thank you, Mash, and thank you, Mr. Stevens. And great thanks to you, Priscilla, for the great interaction just now. And Wakkas, it'll be great to hear more about your gamifying. It'll be great to hear more of that.
Absolutely.
All right, then I'll be taking my leave. Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.